The death of a baby is one of the most painful things that can happen to a family. We invited a special guest to share her vulnerable experience with us. She's going to tell us what helped her get through the hard times and how we can be a better friend to someone who's going through it. Grab your drinks, pop in those earphones, especially if you have little ones around, and let's dive right into episode 60.
Cheers. All right, thank you, Kim, for coming on and being so willing to share your story with us.
Yes.
So let's dive in. Tell us your story and about your pregnancy, your first pregnancy. Were there any complications?
Yes. So with my first pregnancy, it was in 2013. And in the beginning, everything was great. So I had just found out I was pregnant. It was a surprise. We got back from getting engaged. 2 weeks later, I found out I was pregnant. So throughout the pregnancy, there was everything was healthy. Everything was good. Now that I've had children, I do recognize probably about 25 weeks, there was a little bit of a change. I started to not have to use the restroom as much. I was swelling. And so then, you just hear like, oh, you're pregnant, you're going to swell up. And that's very, very normal. Like that's normal. So for me, because I thought that was normal, I didn't even bring it up to my doctor.
Oh, okay.
So I remember vividly going at the time we lived in Oregon, and I traveled up to Seattle for a meeting for work. And I'm always worried, like, oh, I'm gonna have to go to the bathroom because I'm drinking so much water. But we drove for 3 hours and I did not need to use the restroom once. But my legs were like I was very swollen, but I just assumed that's just normal. And I was excited that I didn't have to use the restroom. Yeah. So again, I had seen the doctor, I think a week prior, and everything was fine. There was everything was good. Everything was fine. So then me and Kaylin were traveling back to California to get married. So this was in September. So I think it was September 25th. We came down and we flew, and then I was very uncomfortable. I was swollen. I felt tight. I felt like I couldn't move, and like I couldn't get comfortable the entire flight. So when we came here, my family saw me and they were like, Kim, you're like really, really swollen. And I'm like, yeah, but everybody kind of had the same thought. Like, it's normal. You just got on a plane. Maybe you ate something with too much salt. So I remember literally like laying on the couch and like everyone rubbing my legs, my feet. My best friend, Vicky, was like, oh my God, you're so swollen. Like she started rubbing my legs and she's like, kick your feet up. You need to get comfortable. And so we were there. Wedding day came. Felt normal again, still very swollen. And now looking back at
still not peeing, were you still not peeing a lot?
I wasn't. And again, it didn't register to me that there was something wrong. I was, drinking water. My family thought maybe I was drinking too much water. And I remember like 2 days before the wedding, I called my doctor, and or it may have been actually a day before the wedding. I called the doctor and I was like, hey, like that's when I kind of was like, okay, maybe I'm drinking too much water. Like something's off because I'm not comfortable. And then she told me I needed to go to the emergency room. Like she was like, you need to go get checked at the emergency room. So because obviously I was getting married
the day before the wedding.
Yeah, I was like, I think I'm okay. Everything's fine. Like I've been dealing with this for a couple of days. Like let's get married. And then if I feel like it, I will go the next day. So pretty much, got through the wedding. It was great, but you're on a high. You're married, you're so happy. So I didn't feel uncomfortable, but I obviously was swollen, but I didn't feel anything because I think I'm just mentally like, oh my God, I'm married. I'm so excited. So the next day though, I started feeling uncomfortable again. So me and Kaylin went to the emergency room. They did an ultrasound. They did blood work, urine, which the urine was important because they wanted to see if there's protein in the urine. And so at the time, I still had no protein in the urine. They told me I had preeclampsia and sent me home.
Okay.
So again, then I just thought this was normal. And I was like, okay, we're going home to Oregon in 2 more days. when I go home, I'll set an appointment with my doctor right away. So I set an appointment with my doctor, and then we went in, and let me see. So 10:07. So that was 10:05. We went into the doctor's. We arrived to Oregon, and then I'm like, okay, I had to go to the doctor. My doctor saw me, and immediately I could tell, because she was like a hippie, very chill, very easygoing. I could tell immediately when she saw me, there was something wrong.
Concern.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So then I called Kaylin because he was at work, and I told him, I'm like, hey, like, she didn't tell me anything, but like, I know, like, I can tell, like, something's not right. Can you come? So of course he came in. She didn't tell me too much because the baby had a heartbeat. Again, took my urine. At the time I had no protein in my urine.
Was she still moving? Was the baby still moving?
She was moving, but she wasn't moving. Again, now going back, like, she wasn't moving as much. Like, things that, like, now I'm like overly cautious of.
Mm-hmm.
But then that being my first pregnancy, I was like, well, I felt her. As long as I feel her move a couple times out of the day, we're good. So she was moving, but then again, now thinking back, it wasn't as often as before.
And at this time, she's how many months pregnant were you?
I was 28 weeks.
Okay.
So I was 28 weeks, and then the doctor said, okay, we're going to admit you into the emergency room because we don't know what's going on. She's like, because I know, she basically was honest with me. She's like, you're way too swollen. You definitely have preeclampsia, but like everything else, my blood pressure, everything was normal. So that was the part that they were just trying to be like, well, what's going on with her? So then we got admitted into the hospital. And then after, I think about probably like 5 or 6 hours, they again continue to take tests, ultrasounds. Then the protein in my urine started to show up.
And what does that mean?
So when you have protein in your urine, from what they told me, means that there's something with the, if I remember correctly, but like it's something with the placenta. And it's like, there's something with the placenta that should not, like, you should not have protein in your urine, and it's a red flag.
Okay.
So from what I remember, like,
it's almost like it's leaking or something.
Yes, like something, the nutrients are leaking and it's not getting to where it needs to be.
Okay.
So then being at the hospital, they started to run tests. We started to see like a neonatal. So these are like specialists for like the fetus. So then we saw like 3 or 4 doctors. And so, but they all had specialists. Like there's doctors for me, you know, for the mom, like, let me see how you're doing. Then we had a doctor for the baby. And then, so the specialist for the baby. So of course, at this time we called their parents. My mom, my mother-in-law are like flying in. My sister, my oldest sister, Melissa, we call her sister mom for sure. So they're coming in like at that moment for us. And they basically tell me after like 24 hours, I started having high blood pressure. My iron started going low.
Oh, everything that you didn't have started happening. Like,
it just started happening. So then talking to the doctor, like the neonatal, they were like, okay, you're basically going to need to deliver this baby because it's affecting you and like your health. And so I'm like, okay. But then they said the baby probably wouldn't survive. So in my mind, I was like, okay, so how long do I need to stay here to not move for us to deliver and the likelihood of the baby will survive? Mm-hmm. They were like, well, you know, 30, I think they said 32 weeks is like a safe zone. And I'm like, okay, that's just a couple weeks away. Mm-hmm. So I'll stay here, like whatever I need to do. Mm-hmm. But my health started declining. So that's when Kaylin kind of had to talk to me because I was stubborn. You know, I was like, no, like I'm going to sit here. We'll be fine. Let's deliver. You know, we need to fight for this. Yeah. So then he was like, babe, you know, literally the doctor came in and was like, it's either you or the baby right now, like being fully transparent, or it's both of you. So you need to make a decision. And obviously that's like the hardest decision ever, because as parents, we want to, want to always
you got me too, girl.
You always want to protect your kids. Mm-hmm. And that's what your goal is to, you'll do anything, you'll sacrifice anything. So for me, it was hard, but obviously my family's here. Everyone's like, Kim, we can't lose you both. So like let's try to deliver and see what happens. So they were very transparent that the baby most likely wouldn't survive. Like, I'll deliver, because once I deliver, her heart won't be going anymore. So we delivered. I had a natural delivery, so I was able to deliver naturally, which a lot of people are like have questions, you know, like, oh, like, did you deliver? Like, what happened? But so I am grateful for that experience because I was still able to deliver her, hold her, and to do that. But obviously, she didn't survive from that. And which, you know, was hard. And at that time, I think there's so many emotions that go into it of like, do you want to see her knowing that you can't take this baby home? There's so many internal battles that you go through. And I'm so grateful that, of course, we made the decision to like hold her because they asked us, like, what do you want to do? So it was really good for us to do that because I remember everything. Like, I'm like, oh, I remember her face. And then, you know, now I'm blessed to have more children. So I'm like, dang, this is like a replica. Like, they look alike. They all look alike. So I have this memory. But obviously with that, we want to know what happened because I had a healthy pregnancy for this whole time. And then out of again, now thinking back, there were some signs probably about 3 weeks. I would say like 3 weeks before I delivered. But what happened? Because even although I had these situations, I didn't have, when I went to the doctors and they're taking the tests, like nothing showed up. So going in, we sent like, so my placenta was like 10 times the size of it's supposed to be. And it literally broke apart. Like they had to like keep going in and out to get it out because they were like, this was abnormal. So they did testing on like the placenta, the umbilical cord to kind of see like what could have happened. So what I had, so basically the baby had what they call non-immune high drops. So non-immune high drops is when they retain all the fluid. So basically when I was telling you guys, like I started getting tight, my body, I had what they call mirror syndrome. So my body started doing what was happening to the baby. So to Cadence, what was happening to her inside, my body naturally, like as a parent, you take the pain away from your kids, right? So your body does that, which is crazy. So my body started to do that. And my body was basically trying to pull all of that away from her. So that's why my health started declining. Yeah. So I was hospitalized, I think, for like 3 more days. And then, you know, we sent everything out. We were able to, you know, we were able to have still like a death certificate, get photos, her handprint, her footprint. We were able to have all of that. But then obviously we want to know like what happened, like how did it happen? So they did a ton of testing on like I said, my placenta, on the baby, and just to try to figure out like how did this happen, especially although they even told me, because when I started to think back, I told them, I said, well, I started not using the restroom like 3 weeks ago. They're like, yeah, but you saw the doctor. You had nothing. Like the baby's heart was good. Like I have an ultrasound, like everything was good. So we need to try to just, you know, determine what happened. Yeah. So when that happened, they basically couldn't determine anything. So there was really like no answer as to like what specifically happened to that resulted in her, you know, having this, and as well as me, and her not making it. So, which was obviously
random. Like, it's just like a random thing.
They basically told me, Kim, honestly, it would be like you getting struck by lightning twice if it happened again. So like, they were like, that is how rare it is. That is how uncommon, and especially like not to have the answers, because they just couldn't determine. There's so many different things. I think they said they did like up to like 90 different scenarios, and like none of them resulted in this is what happened after the testing.
So this whole time she was absorbing all of your fluids? Is that what?
Yes.
Because since you weren't peeing a lot, she was absorbing whatever fluids, and then at some point, like right before you gave birth to her, 3 weeks before, you started absorbing it back from her. Is that why you got real? Okay, I'm just
got sick. It's called like, yeah, It's called mirror syndrome. So basically you're mirroring what's happening to your fetus and to your baby. So that's essentially what happened. So I had severe preeclampsia, obviously, because I'm not using the restroom, I'm absorbing.
Yeah.
But there was something wrong pretty much with the placenta. Like essentially, like that's what the biggest issue was something was with the placenta. So that's why the baby wasn't getting what she needed. And then again, my body started doing the same thing that was happening with her, where because she still had a heartbeat, she still had everything, but they basically said like, you know, they're like, when you deliver, like the moment you deliver, like she won't, because she's out of you, like she will no longer have that.
And so she was alive the day that you went in for delivery, and she just didn't make it through the birthing process.
Yes.
Is that because she was so weak from all of the trauma that she was enduring?
And because, and then also, you know, they're connected to us, so they have all of everything that we're giving them. She was basically had all of that. So the moment that that's disconnected, they were like, she will most likely not be crying when she was delivered.
So basically, it's like you guys were keeping each other alive. Basically, like you were
pretty much.
Oh, wow. Did she take like a last little gasp or anything, or?
No, when she was born, she didn't cry. She didn't cry, which they told me they were like they were like, when she comes out, you know, she potentially she's probably not going to cry. If we would have, you know, tried, like, you know, there's a lot of hard decisions of like revival and like what that looks like and trying to do that. And so talking to the neonatal about like options, I just didn't feel good. You know, me and Kaylin had to do a lot of praying and a lot of like, what are we going to do? You know, you want to fight, you want to, I want this, I want this, I want this. But is that selfish? Because are you torturing this poor little baby that the likelihood of them surviving is so low? And then what does that look like? Oops, sorry guys. What does that look like afterward too? You know, what does that look like for the baby? What does that look like
issues
that the baby would have? So there was just so many like challenges, and they basically were like, if we do this, the neonatal, and like going through the experience, as much as like tough as it was to make those decisions, everything they said basically came into fruition. So they're like, when this baby comes out, that she's not going to cry. They're like, she has a heartbeat right now, everything, but when you deliver, she won't. And so basically everything that they said was correct.
So what's the process after she's born? They ask you if you want a photographer to come in and photograph you guys?
So they have a volunteer, I believe it's a volunteer service, because we didn't have to pay for anything for these specific situations. So then you can still document, obviously, like your baby and like you still having the baby. So then they had a special photographer who does like photography of the baby, like you and the baby, and of just of the baby. And then they take the photos in the room. So they don't, and until you're ready to say, okay, you can take the baby, but the baby, they do everything in the room with you. Kind of like when you have a baby.
How long were you able to keep her with you guys?
I'm pretty sure we had her for almost 2 hours.
Okay.
And then we let go. And then they were able to take her to run tests and to do all that stuff.
Was that just awful to have to let her go?
Yes.
Who got to come into the room? Was it just you and your husband, or
did you have family?
So Kaylin was there start to finish for everything. My mom, my sister mom, my oldest sister, Melissa, and then my mother-in-law came.
For the delivery? Were they in there for the delivery?
No.
Okay.
No, so for the delivery, it was just me and Kaylin, and then the doctors. I think it was just my doctor and one nurse.
Okay.
So we had, but then later, Kaylin told me, he's like, Kim, that whole hallway outside, he was like, there was like all the nurses were lined up in case something happened to you. They were so worried about my health. That's how bad my like blood pressure went. Like I had super high blood pressure, my heart rate, and everything. So he's like, it was crazy. The whole aisle had lined up of nurses ready to go in case something happened to you, you know.
And did you feel different, like when your health was failing? Was your adrenaline kind of covering and masking all of that health issues?
Yeah,
Or
like
did
for
you feel
me,
yourself failing?
I mean, I felt tired, but I think I was so emotionally like disconnected, and like my mind was just like, you just have to push through. I didn't feel weak. Um, I didn't feel like my health was declining, which is part of the reason why I was like, well, how many
We
weeks
could
do I
do
need to
this.
sit here
Yeah.
and I'll do whatever I need to do.
Right.
But the doctor was like, you know, I know you want to do that, but I'm telling you, you're not doing well. So I think because of hearing that news and dealing with it, I just kind of was like, I didn't feel it. At least right now, like I can't remember feeling sick. Like I don't remember feeling sick. I just remember feeling like almost numb, and like you start thinking about stuff. I didn't take my prenatal pill on this day. I took it late this day.
And
You know, you
you're
start blaming yourself.
No.
Yeah.
And I was just
Okay.
curious, how old were you when that was all with your first pregnancy? Because I know they say like if you wait longer for your first pregnancy, there's more likely to have like complications.
Yeah. Oh, that's it. Like, geez Louise, because I had Quinny when I was 30, and it was like 2 years, so I was 28.
Okay.
So you're
Yeah,
So
28.
young. That's young.
Yeah. When everybody came in to visit, who did you have to make any phone calls, or did everybody kind of handle that for you to let family know?
I had everybody handle it. So my sister called my work, and luckily, again, I've worked with H&M for such a long time, and at that time I had been with the company over 5 years. So the people that I actually needed to talk to were people I've developed like personal relationships with. So my sister was able to call one of my close coworkers to tell him, and then which was great because he was able to call HR, and HR was like, Kim doesn't need to do anything. I'll submit all the paperwork. So I didn't have to like submit paperwork or call or do anything like that. Friends and family, my mom, my sister, I mean, my sisters, both of them. I have 3 sisters, but my 2 older sisters pretty much handled all of that. Kaylin, my mother-in-law, let that side of the family know. So I didn't have to really tell anybody at that time.
Yeah. Did you, so now that everything, like you went home and processing everything, you said you blamed yourself. You want to kind of talk about that more?
Yeah. So you go through a process, for me at least. You just think back because you're thinking, especially when you don't have an answer, it's very hard to accept not knowing why or like what happened, or like, okay, so you're telling me the chances of this is happening again is so rare, but what happened, you know, that caused
in
it.
the first
So I started
place,
like so this won't happen again, you know, because obviously it can happen because it happened to me. So definitely a lot of, you know, you go through self-pity. Why me? Why, God, why did you do this? Is this that time I was mean to that person? I forgot to take my prenatal pill that one day. I joked about like, you know, like I got this, like, you know, like whether it was like, oh, I want something from work, right? And I'm like, oh, you know, I'll just show them I'm pregnant. So then they don't, you know, they'll be like, oh, okay, we're going to help her, because you see a pregnant woman, and a lot of times people are like, oh my God, are you okay? And I'm like regretting that. I'm like, I'm taking this for granted. Like maybe that one joke was the why, you know, this happened to me. So then I went through a lot of self-blame, taking things for granted, questioning, you know, like, why does this happen? What did I do? Why did I deserve this? So that was tough. I definitely isolated myself a lot. Just talked to
was going to be
Caitlin.
my next question. Did you close yourself off from people?
Yeah. So it was just Kaylin, pretty much. Like I would talk to, you know, be myself and like say your thoughts, because you get into such a dark place of self-blame and questioning things. So, I mean, of course I talked to like my sisters. It was a lot of things were through text because I didn't want to talk to anybody. Like I didn't want to, at that time, I didn't want to have to explain everything and relive everything at that time, because I wasn't in a good mental space to deal with it. So I wouldn't really even text people. Like once I told them, like my closest friends, they would check on me daily, but I would never respond because I'm like, you know, I didn't want to.
like
You just don't.
reliving it over and over.
And people
and
ask you how you're doing, and you're like,
I
I'm
don't want to
still
talk to
awful.
nobody.
Yeah, I'm still
yeah,
awful
yeah.
right now.
I'm not doing great, actually. Did you
Right.
want to hear
Mhm.
that? Like,
Yeah.
and on top of it, like, what do you do for your friends? You want to, and friends and family, you want to help them. You want them to feel better. So like for me, like telling you, I feel like shit today. I feel horrible today. There's nothing that they can do.
Yeah.
And then especially being in another state, not being able to like do something physically for somebody, it just makes it harder on other people too. So it was definitely like, I definitely shut off for like, I would say like, where probably like 3 weeks where I didn't respond to text messages like at all. Like I would tell Kaylin like, hey, this person texts us. So Kaylin, luckily, because we're like, me and him are close, our friends and family are really close, he was great at like, you know, basically saying, hey, thank you so much, you know, Kim's just not ready to talk. So he was like a huge, you know,
Advocate for
help.
you.
Yeah. And then being able to at least be strong for both of us and to like thank people. Of course I was so appreciative, but like I didn't really have anything nice to say at the time.
So tell us about your hard days. Like, how was it coming home without the baby? That had to be a big struggle for you.
For sure. So I think, I mean, so like as I told you guys, me and Kaylin had gotten engaged in Hawaii, and then we found out like it was like a surprise. Like 2 weeks later, I'm like, oh, so I'm pregnant. So everything was kind of like, you know, then we decided that, you know, we got engaged. We decided we wanted to be married before we brought the baby into the world. And so I didn't really have, in the sense, like in the back of my mind, like I was grateful. I didn't really have like a baby shower yet. Like all of that was going to be after the fact. So I didn't really have to come home to too much. There were things I bought myself, you know, myself, like, oh, I can't wait to buy her this. But it was definitely hard because we have, you know, we had our condo, we had the nursery. Like I was like, okay, I had plans and I had ideas for the nursery. So there was a lot of crying, sadness, you know, kind of wanting to be by myself a little bit. Because, you know, I just like, again, it goes back into those thoughts of like, what happened? Why me? So it was really, really tough to do that. And like, to want to get out of bed, to want to even go outside. I think I stayed inside for like 2 weeks. Like I didn't want to go outside. I didn't want to see anybody.
Which is
Didn't want to interact. Yeah.
How were
so
you
for
with
2
your
weeks.
husband though? Were you kind of standoffish with him too, just because you're going through your own thing? You know, that's hard. I'm sure he could sympathize with you, but he doesn't
For
fully
sure.
understand what you went through. So naturally, you could kind of be standoffish with him too.
Yeah. I think with us, I mean, he was a huge contributor of like me trying to like get up and to motivate. I think there was parts of me that didn't want to let him know how bad I was doing, because I'm like, I don't want to make him feel worse, or he's dealing with this his way. We all are different. So, you know, and again, to your point, like I physically had to go through it. So there is a definitely a difference. And he definitely went through it. It was tough for both of us. But I think when I saw him kind of getting his routine back, it made me kind of try not to say too much, and afraid of like bringing him down. Like I don't want to be the Debbie Downer. I don't want to be the person that's like, oh, like, you know, he's getting back to his routine and I'm over here like,
were you
crying.
also kind of bitter that he was getting back to his routine before you were able to? You know, were you did you ever feel resentful? Like,
no, you
No?
know,
Oh,
I
that's good.
know, like, I mean, I've known people that have gone through like the same thing, and because I've been pretty open about my situation, people have confided in me, and I've like heard it, and I've heard that, actually a lot of that. I think because like the one thing me and Kaylin have is like really good communication. So like we talk about everything, like uncomfortable things, and Kaylin would check in with me. He'd be like, so how are you feeling? You know? And so I'd be like, well, like, do you want me to tell you the truth, or you want me to pretend? He's like, duck him, like, tell me exactly how you feel. And he never made me feel like I needed to get over it, or like I needed to move on. And I think that helped me, because from people that I've spoken with and had open conversations with, that's normally what happens, because again, like to what you were saying, Roni, about, you know, they didn't physically experience it. Of course, like the emotional, all of that, like it's traumatizing for them as well, but it's very different when you physically go through it, and every person is different. So we handle it different. And I've heard a lot of like situations where that is the case, where the significant other is like, okay, but you can't be like this forever. Like you need to like get up, you need to get out, you need to do this. Where there is definitely like Kaylin's like, let's just go for a walk. We can just go down the street. You know, you want to get some fresh air, might help you. And if I said no, he was okay with it. And then, but he wouldn't not stop asking me. He would say, you know, a couple of days later, it's like, hey, I think it might be nice to get some sun.
To get some air.
Do you want to go outside to get some air? And then finally, I think after, like I said, 2 weeks, I was like, okay, let's go outside.
And
let's do this.
When you went
outside.
Did he ever voice to you too? Like if he ever blamed himself for anything?
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. You know what? I don't think so. Like, I can't remember him like ever like blaming himself or blaming me.
Or
like
questioning
I think
something he did or could have done differently.
Yeah, no, he never did that. Nor like he was the main one. Like when I would try to do self-blame and, you know, be like, oh my God, like was this why and this why? Like he would always like reel me in and being like, you know, you have to remember, like at the end of the day, things happen for a reason. Like he's like, even though like he's like, well, you and I have no idea why this happened to us and like why we experienced this. He's like, but eventually he's like, this will help other people. And, you know, we just have to be strong through this. So he never did self-blame, but Kaylin's like a very strong, logical, you know, we have a good relationship with God, you know? So for us, it's like, you just can't question too much. And I think once we got to that point, like, I think he got there quicker than me for sure. But once like we got to the point of like, at the end of the day, like we can't, like things happen to good people all the time. Yeah. Unfortunately, like there's really good people and bad things happen. Yeah. And so how can you take this situation and like use it for the better and to be more like, okay, how can I be an advocate of this? Like, don't question this, or like be supportive when you see somebody that's your friend and that it's their first baby. And everyone was telling me, and again, this is no one's fault, but like everyone's like, this is normal, but maybe I might be that one person. I might be like, I would still tell your doctor. Yeah. You should double check. So we took it as that, but he definitely is like, you know, really good about accepting things and trying not to focus so much on the why and focus more on like, what can we do now and how can we learn from this, or how can we grow from this, versus like me at the time was just like, why? Yeah.
That's nice to have that.
Yeah. You mentioned also, you said you didn't have like a lot of things that you bought for her, but the things that you did have, what did you do with those things?
I kept most of them. So like even till this day, my daughter, like she wore like a jacket, or like I bought some like cute little bloomies, and so like there's certain things that like I've kept, and even like if it's like gender neutral, like my son wears and we just hang on to have just as like little keepsakes, and to make sure like she has that they have those things. So it was like clothes, like pretty much clothes. So like a bloomers, or I had a jacket I bought that we still have that, you know, like the kids can wear and as they grow up. So that was pretty much those things. People gave us keepsakes. So like one of Kaylin's coworkers, I remember, super sweet. Her mom's an artist, I believe. It was either her mom's an artist or her mom like knows an artist. It was one of the two. But she painted this little like angel baby here, and then like the mom here, and it's just like an abstract painting. So we still have that till this day. It was very like thoughtful with a cute little message on the back. So you know, cards, those types of things I kept.
Nice. And with this happening to you, did the thought of having more kids scare you after this?
Yes. I wanted more kids for sure. Yeah. Like no doubt in my mind, but it definitely, the whole process, like, you know, you have that first time mom paranoia, like I was times 20. Okay. Any little thing would freak me out. I would call, thank God for nurses hotlines. I would call for everything. And then when Quinn got here, I mean, for sure, there's like a lot of growing pains with that, because you're first time mom, right? And I always say, like, you don't know, you never know how you are as a mom, and your partner doesn't know how they are as a dad. So you guys are like all of a sudden relearning each other all over again, on top of me being extremely paranoid about everything. Everything is heightened for me, like by 10. Like, it's abnormal. Like, I recognize like my paranoia for sure. Like, any little thing would like freak me out.
And that was with your pregnancy too? Like, were
Yes.
you super hypersensitive to everything?
Everything. If I was like, she moved today, but she didn't move like as much. Like, I like, you know, I started counting the kicks. I started counting the movement. I started making sure, like, tracking how many times a day I was using the restroom. Like, am I using the restroom enough? Taking my vitamins, like making sure I'm taking enough vitamins. I'm eating the right stuff, like super duper paranoid. So if I felt like a little bit of anything, I mean, I think, like I said, like movement or something, I'd call the doctor. And I called the nurse's hotline. I'm like, well, she moved, but she didn't move as much as she normally does. And then they'd be like, okay, well, you know, like, you can come in if you'd like. I'm like, okay. So
I'm gonna
Do you
come in
have the
because
same doctor since from the first pregnancy?
So with Cadence, the doctor that delivered me, because my actual doctor didn't work that day, like, of the delivery, she was there the whole time. She actually delivered Quinn. So it was actually
Cool.
very interesting, because I ended up being in the same room that I delivered Cadence with two of the same nurses. And the nurses were amazing. And I remember them. And I was like, I don't know if you remember me. And they actually did. When I told them my story, like, we remember you. So they were all the same. And so the doctor that delivered Cadence and Quinny, she actually was pregnant, and she had just had a miscarriage 2 years prior to as well.
Wow.
So like, we had like, you know, and that's when I felt like, you know, kind of stars align. Like, because when she was like, listen, I'm trying my hardest to remain professional, but she's like, I understand where you're coming from. So she was great. And so I ended up making her my OBG with Quinn, because my doctor had like moved out of state. So I was like, okay, I want Laura to do it. And then so she was my doctor, and she delivered Quinny too.
And
So
what was the timeline from the first delivery to when you had your second child?
2 years.
2 years. Okay.
Yes.
And when did the doctor say you would be cleared to have another? Like, when were you ready mentally to get pregnant
Try
again?
again.
Did you kind of think about that immediately? Like, because, you know, you were ready mentally for a baby. Did you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, definitely we waited a year. I think probably for me, that longing of a child, and especially like meeting your child and not being able to bring them home, was always there. But I knew also, like, I had so much healing to do before I had another baby. And again, like with that paranoia, the fear of like, oh my God, like, what's going to happen? This might happen. So after a year, me and Kaylin basically stopped preventing, and we were like, okay, I think we're ready for this. And so then after a year, then Bahamas happened.
So before you got pregnant again, what helped you through the hard days? Like,
I mean,
did you go to counseling or anything, or?
Well, so I joined groups. So there was like a lot of like groups and stuff that you have. And so I joined like Facebook groups of people that have been through something similar. They offer counseling. They offer like a whole pack when I left the hospital to like touch base. I had a nurse that checked in with me. I personally didn't go through like professional counseling. Like, definitely, like I said, like rebuilding that trust with God and like why things happen, journaling, like having a journal and like really writing things down about how I feel, why, you know, like raw emotions, things that you probably wouldn't tell like a lot of people, like you kind of just write it down. So like journaling helped me a lot. And I think honestly, I think after about a month is when we made it, you know, because this is the height of social media, 2013, like everybody has Instagram. And so it's not something I can hide. I had to be honest about like my experience. And then so once we posted, well, Kaylin is like amazing with words. So I just repost whatever he says, because he just always has the right things to say and knows how to say it. so many people reach out to me that were like, I went through the same thing. I'm going through that right now. And so I realized I wasn't unique. Like, yes, the situation happened to me, but there's so many people that go through this. And I think that helped me a lot. Like people that I've gone to school with, people that like never told anybody. They're like, Kim, I've never told anybody this, but I've had 3 miscarriages in the last year and I've had this. And so it kind of helped me realize too, about my healing process is that like, Kim, you're not alone. Other people do experience this. It's not your fault. There's not something wrong with you. This is just something that does happen to people. And we just need to be more appreciative of the times and more cautious, of things and what we say. Because you say things like, how many kids are you going to have? When are you going to start having kids? Like all of that. I'm like, never again, never will I ever, put that pressure on somebody. Yeah. Cause you never know. So I think once we came about a month out, Kaylin wrote something really, really nice. And I remember like reposting it. And then it was like, wow, so many people are going through the same thing as me, thanking me for being so open about it. And, being open and letting them know like what happened, like to the best of my ability via social media. But also being curious because they're like, hey, I actually went through the same thing, or I'm nervous. Me and my partner are having a baby. Do you mind if I ask you? So I know this is our first, so I know what to look out for. And I think that helped me be at ease, that I can be helpful to somebody else and to help them with their journey, make them feel some kind of comfort. Because it definitely comforted me knowing like, okay, this isn't a problem with me. Like this isn't something I did. This is something that a lot of women and men and families experience. So.
And how long did it take you to get to that point to get back to look into those Facebook groups, those support groups? Like how long did it take for you to finally like get there?
I started looking at them, never involved, never sharing a story, probably like a week after to kind of see,
okay.
But like for me to like comment or to be like, this is what I'm going through. This is like my story. I probably would say it took me like probably about a month.
Okay.
Month and a half before I felt comfortable sharing with people what happened.
Did the loss of your daughter put you and your husband's relationship at risk or strain on your relationship, I should say?
I'm like super grateful that definitely like, if anything, again, we were newlyweds. We just got engaged. We got married and I was like, honestly, I'm so grateful that it didn't. If anything, it brought our relationship stronger. Yes. It built a stronger bond. Full transparency though, again, as I was saying, a lot of people had communicated with me. Like there's a lot of people I know that went through similar situations, whether it was miscarriages or the exact same situation as me, and husbands left.
Well, how long were you and him, your husband together before this?
Before the engagement.
Before the engagement.
Well, not before the engagement, just before this.
Everything happened.
Yeah.
So we were together since 2008, and this happened in 2013. So 5 years.
So you guys were already together for a while. Those relationships that ended, were they newly together, or were they long lasting like you guys too?
They were long lasting, and it just caused so much. Like there was some people. There's one girl like I connected with from high school, and similar situation, but except pretty much her situation was they knew before. It's called trisomy 18. So they knew before, like the baby after a certain amount of weeks was not going to make it. And like husband left there. And I feel like it was years. It could not have been years. Like, don't quote me, because again, this was just like a connection that we made. But now I'm like happy to say that they're back together. But like it caused huge strain on their relationship. There was someone else we knew, one of Kaylin's friends, and like they were in their relationship. And after this happened, about a month later, the person who she was engaged with left her. So it's like, but a lot of that kind of goes back to your earlier question of people feeling like people need to get over things,
grieving differently. Yeah.
grieving differently. And a lot of that from the conversations I've had with like those people, and there's several people. Those are two that just stand out to me. But there are also two that like have children now, so it's like a happy story for me. But that went through that, and I'm just like, it happens a lot, and where they just leave because to your point, people grieve differently, or some people just don't want to deal with it. And
did you have that ever in your mind, that thought like, oh my gosh, I hope that we can make it through this together, since I've heard of people,
doing that,
breaking up? Yeah.
I mean,
or did you hear about it after after?
Yeah, I feel like I heard about it more after. And then like I said, like me and Kaylin, like we're pretty transparent in like our feelings, how we were feeling, like what we needed from each other. So, and I know like I'm super blessed and fortunate to like have that partnership and like to have somebody like that, because these are people, again, that were with their partners for that long too. And they were just like, no, like I'm not doing this anymore. So I think I never thought of it. I think actually I would say, yeah, not because of anything that was like said, but I guess kind of like in the back of your mind, like, am I gonna be able to have more babies, and what, we want a family, like kind of like that kind of goes like through your mind, and like and then that self-doubt of like, was it me, was it something that I did? So I would say that due to that, yes, of like, what if I can't do this, and like, is that a deal breaker? And obviously Kaylin's like we're in this forever, so like you don't have anything to worry about. But I do think, actually now thinking back, that I probably definitely had like those thoughts of like not being adequate enough to be able to provide this thing that's normal, and this is what you should happen. You get married, you have a family, and like you should be able to do this, and what if this is a sign that I'm not able to do this? So yeah, I would say there was that, not necessarily because of like us, but more of like my own self-doubt and insecurity, and not feeling like fully there.
Was it hard for you when people would ask you after the loss of your daughter, like maybe a year later or so, when they would ask you like, oh, are you going to try again, or are you going to have another baby? Was that hard for you to answer, or did that not affect you in a negative way?
I think it was hard, because I think once I was able to tell the story about how the chances of this happening again is so unlikely, but it's still scary. I think people have like really good intentions and like really intend to just make you feel better, but like sometimes it makes you feel like shit. Like, that's not what I wanted to hear, but okay. So like I would have people like, oh, well, that's good. Like I remember one friend not realizing actually how far along I was. Like, well, at least that happened, but like you didn't like. They didn't realize I actually delivered the baby, that I held the baby, and I was so far along. Like, at least you didn't have to like hold, or you filled that baby. I was 28 weeks pregnant. Like I had a baby, like there was a baby, but I don't need anybody to tell me at least you did it, because at the end of the day, when you find out you're pregnant, you're pregnant. Whether it's 2 weeks, you've been pregnant for 2 weeks, 4 weeks, like I don't think that there should be a timeline of somebody saying at least you didn't have to experience something. And like, little did that person know I actually did. So I think people have like really good intentions, like, oh, at least you'll be able to have, and if you can't have kids, I'm gonna have kids for you. And it's like, wait a minute, and I think that's when that seed was planted of like, oh, maybe I can have kids. Is that what that means? So and again,
that's interesting, because I have had thought that at 25 weeks was the safe mark, or and then there's people saying 13 weeks, so, but 13 weeks is when a lot of people decide to announce that they're pregnant. But then I had thought that 25 weeks was when the baby would be able to survive outside of your womb. So to hear 28 weeks, it's like, oh, you're just constantly learning new things, that it's not always a hard, fast rule,
Yeah, every situation is different. So yeah, I think like that, like those things were hard, where I don't want to be harsh, and I don't want to be like, well, actually, like, didn't want to hear that, So I definitely found myself like battling like how honest and transparent to be with people, because I'm just naturally like a person that just says it. And I try to be tactful, of course, and like mindful and respectful. But at the same time, like I'm a person, I'm just like, listen, if you don't know, like I'm going to let you know, like that's not okay. But like that was hard for me because I know it was coming from such a good place. But it was like, I know your intentions are so good, but like you have no idea how much you're hurting me by saying, you know, these things, you know? So I think that was the tough part. And people asking if I was going to have more kids was actually like, I'm like, oh, you know, like, you know, we want to when we're ready. But I felt like people were uncomfortable. I didn't get a lot of
those.
that.
Okay.
No, not like, when are you going to try again? Like I didn't get a lot. It was more of like, you know, I will do this for you, or, you know, at least you can have more kids. It won't, you know, like kind of that type of thing. But I don't think anyone was very comfortable, like flat out saying like, so when are you guys going to start having a family? I think my mother-in-law asked, like, and it wasn't uncomfortable at all, but I think my mother-in-law asked me, and I think it was almost a year. And that's when me and Kaylin, and like we shared with our family at that time, like we were deciding that we were going to try to start having kids again. So but by then it was a year. My mother-in-law just was like, just asked me, like very sweet. It wasn't, I didn't feel any way. I felt like, oh, I felt very comfortable, and I felt like it was a valid way.
Right. And she's your mother-in-law. So there's like, you know, she's in that inner circle of trust, you know, that you can ask those kind of questions, you know, and feel a little bit more comfortable, aside from like if it was a friend or something, you know, or a distant person. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you guys wanted to start, you know, having more kids a year later. When you finally got pregnant with your second, when did you feel safe to announce it or celebrate that you were actually pregnant?
Oh man, I'm pretty sure I waited until 30 weeks.
30. Wow.
I didn't, not on social media, like obviously our close friends. I think even with Quinny, I waited like, because I was living in Oregon, so nobody would know. Like my close friends and my family in California, like nobody's gonna see me. Like our family, we told pretty much right away, because kind of like my mentality, like after experiencing this, because like what Janelle was saying about like you're safe at 12 weeks, you know, or you're safe at this time. Like that's when I just realized, like, but like when you're pregnant, like you're pregnant, and if I do have to go through a devastating loss again, like my family are going to be the ones that are going to keep me afloat and keep me motivated and keep me strong. So we told our family, like our immediate family, like siblings, parents, not extended family. I believe we told them at 12 weeks. And then I didn't tell my girlfriends until I was like 16 weeks, 16, 20. And then social media was until I was 30 weeks.
Wow.
Okay.
And so how many kids do you have now?
I have two. I have my 6-year-old daughter and then my 1.5-year-old son. Oh, Quinny's going to be 6 this year. She's not even 6. She tells me every day. She's 6. She's 6 this year.
And you're pregnant.
And I have one on the way.
And when are you due?
Yeah, so number 3. And they're due May 21st. Yes.
Oh, congrats.
Thank you. Super exciting.
With those difficult questions that people had asked you, how could we, or, you know, be a better friend to somebody who has experienced this kind of loss? Like, what advice do you have?
My best advice is just be an ear. I think like sometimes, again, like everyone's intentions are so pure and we want to like, it's like in any situation, right? Like you always want to make somebody feel better, but like sometimes like not saying anything at all and just saying I'm here. A reminder. I remember getting texts from my friends, just like, I just want you to know I'm here. That's it. Like that made my day. Like those texts. So I think sometimes less is more. Just listen to them. Let their feelings be valid. Don't try to relate. I think that's another thing that people try to do. Like, oh my God, like I went through that too. And then you've discovered, you're like, oh, you did. Like, you know, you're excited. Oh, you did. And then you find out more details. I'm like, wow, your situation was absolutely like nothing.
Not the same.
The same. And again, not making it seem like your situation wasn't sad or like invaluable, but it's completely different from what I went through, and it's not relatable. So and I think like again, and then you start feeling and your mind starts to go away. So I think like the best advice I can give to people is like, just be an ear, be support. And like I said, those little text messages or card or like flowers, like those things made me feel supported. And I felt like people were there, like, no, I didn't call you back right away. I'm sorry. I didn't respond to your text messages right away. But like, that was a reminder that I had so much support and so many people rallying with me and to support me, that it helped me get through the really, really tough times. But that would be like the best advice. I think people try to relate and try to give advice when it's like, I really just don't, I just want to say what I have to say, and you just say, I understand. And that's it.
Yeah.
I like that you said, like, even if I don't respond right away, like just sending those text messages, you know, is still nice. Yeah. And giving you that space too, to grieve.
To grieve, yeah.
Yes. Because when you want it, you'll say something, you know, like some people are comfortable being like, I need my space, and some people aren't. So some people might just, and some people want somebody there. So everyone's
sometimes
different.
it's confusing because sometimes you want somebody there, but you're like, but I don't want to talk, you know, or like, it's just, you're battling those internal feelings too, you know? Yeah,
exactly. And that's like the biggest thing, I think, even like work, like with all my friends, and they were so like, my friends have been my friends since like middle school, and like we were like super close. So I think that was like the hardest thing, because they're like, Kim, I'm used to talking to you like every other day and like just like on the way home, and so I think that was like hard. But it also, they knew like, hey, she needs her space, like I need to give her time. And like my friends that I'm like super duper 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 close with, you know, they flew out and came to see me, and we didn't really talk about it. They were just like there. My best friend Vicky, I remember, she came out like 2 weeks later and was just like, okay, what do you want? What do you want to eat? You're going to eat whatever you want. You want ice cream every day? We're going to have ice cream every day. So that was nice, because she came out and it was like, do you want to talk about it? Not today. Okay. Well, what do you want to eat? Because I'm hungry and I'm in Oregon and I don't have kids. So like, let's go. So it brought some like normalcy back and to help. But I think like for sure, it's just more about like understanding that everybody's different. Everybody handles things different, and there's no right or wrong way. And you can share your story, but also keep in mind that your story is your story, and everyone's like, you need to respect everyone else's story.
What would you tell a listener who's going through the same thing? Maybe she's barely experiencing it, or a listener who is pregnant, but she's already experienced that, you know, like what would you tell somebody?
I would say, you can only control what you can control. I hope, like, no matter what your religious beliefs are, I hope, like, if you have like some form of a belief in a higher being of some sort, like try your hardest to understand that like things truly happen for a reason. And it is so hard to relate at the time. It is not fun, and you don't want to know why this is happening to you, but like really trust the process. And hopefully like you'll be in a situation later, you can be somebody else's support, and you can be that voice for somebody else. And then hopefully you can be a success story. So for me, as scary as that it is, like I'm now super blessed to have 2 children and another one on the way. So that's like a huge blessing. But every single pregnancy, I'm scared. Every single pregnancy, I still deal with those things, and those are normal feelings. But just know like things do genuinely happen for a reason, and that you're not alone. And unfortunately, you're not unique. A lot of women and people go through this every single day, so that you do have people that you can talk to, and there are resources out there for you to help you get through this time.
So you said every single pregnancy you're still afraid. Do you feel like it gets at all any easier?
A little. I'm not as paranoid. I would say I'm like a normal first time mom now. Like someone who hasn't experienced like the bad stuff, you know, like but I'm like definitely, I'm still heightened, like, oh, Jalen, oh, he fell. And Kaylin's like, dude, like he's tough, like he's all right, like he runs into walls every day. I'm like, I know, but is he okay? But I'm still like And like for me, like I will start talking to my, but like hi, like, to the baby. If I'm like, okay, she kicked, but she hasn't kicked in an hour, she hasn't moved, I haven't felt her. So like little things like that, I'm like, okay, let me have an orange. Like things that I know that will like make the baby move and that type of thing. Like that still goes through my mind. So every pregnancy is definitely like, I'm still aware of my body, like if there's anything different, but I'm not as paranoid like as with Quinny, my first after Cadence. Any little thing I would freak out. Now I'm like, I don't freak out as much, but I would say I'm more like a first time mom.
Was it
not a psycho one?
When you were in the middle of all of your grieving, was it hard for you to be happy for friends who were pregnant and
Yes,
delivering?
not happy, but a sense of why could that not be me? Because then you notice all this, when things bad things happen, you notice like everyone's pregnant now. Every freaking person I see is pregnant, and everyone has like or like, maybe we were trying and it took us a little bit longer than what we had expected. And I'm like, everyone has a pregnancy announcement. Like what the heck? So I wouldn't say I wasn't happy for them, but envy, I think, happened a little bit for sure of like, like I'm so excited for them to have this, but like why couldn't me? Yeah, it's like, when's my turn? Like, why hasn't it happened already for me? So definitely some of that. And I have friends that like currently are like going through those things too, and like those challenges of like wanting to have children, and it's been quarantine. There's a pregnancy announcement like every other day, and they've confided in me because I've gone through some form of that, and it's hard. It's because it's not that you're not happy for them, but it's like, but why can't this be me? Right. Why can't I be the person that can be making this announcement? And I've been trying for so long, and I want this so bad, and this is like, we're doing things the traditional way, and I think I deserve this. So I definitely was hard, but not that I wasn't happy. It was just more, I would say, envy, which I'm not naturally that type of person. I'm always like rooting for everybody. I'm like, yes, like you're winning. Like I want the best for you. But that was like a new feeling for me for sure, because I'm not a very envious person or like jealous person or wanting what other people have. Like, I'm like, ooh, what are they doing? I'm going to try that. Like they're winning over there. Yeah. But it definitely like that, which was a new feeling for me, was envy for sure. Like, oh, I wish that was me. Why can't I have that?
And you mentioned a little bit that it took you a while to get pregnant. Were you with your second pregnancy, so your daughter Quinn, it took you a while to get pregnant with her?
Yeah, I think you naturally think, okay, it's going to take like 2 months. Yeah. I'm ready. We're going to do that. Listen, we can literally just have fun. Like it's just going to happen. And so it did take us, I think, roughly like 6 to 7 months where we just thought it would just happen. And then with Jalen, I mean, we tried for over, I would say, about a year. And then we were like, okay, I'm not getting pregnant. Maybe, what is it? And so what I've discovered is it's stress, work. So not that like work is like overly stressful, but like my mindset, anybody who like really knows me knows like I'm just very focused. And so like when I want something and we need to get things done, I'm fully there and present and like, okay, this is what we have to do. And I'm constantly trying to figure out like strategies and like, how can we be more successful? How can we do this? So I've discovered when I'm on vacation, which is why my children are like all in the same month. It's like I disconnect from everything. Yeah, exactly. Like anything that's like, because when I'm on vacation or I'm like out, I'm like completely disconnected. I'm unplugged. Yeah, I'm like not worried. Don't text me about anything. Don't ask me any questions. I'm not there. So yeah, like it definitely, I would say with Jalen for sure. So my son, so technically my third, that was like a little bit more of like, this is taking a way longer, more so him than Quinny. Like Quinny felt longer, I think, because of the want so bad of this thing that I once had, And then with Jalen, it was like, okay, we're ready. Okay, it didn't happen, not a big deal. But then it was like, okay, time out. This is taking like a lot longer than we expected. So, which it could be age too. So I check it as stress. like depending on how much stress I'm going through at that moment, like mental stress, then my body reacts to that.
Do you tell your kids about cadence?
Yes. So every year we do like whether it's a balloon or a cake or anything like that. So Quinny knows that she has a guardian angel, is what I call her. I was like, we have our own guardian angel, you know? So every year, whether I take the day off, Kaylin takes the day off, but we'll like have a cupcake or something to celebrate her. In the beginning, we did a lot when it was just me and Kaylin, you know, go to the beach, release a balloon, biodegradable. We would do little things like that. And then now, like, since Quinny's older, and especially because she kind of like understands heaven, because we've had some deaths in the family, grandparents, great aunts and that type of thing, she understands heaven a little bit more. So now, like, I'm like, hey, you have your own guardian angel. You have your sister, your older sister. And so when we mentioned that after Jalen, that's when she really talked. Now that she kind of understands it, she really talks about wanting a little sister, which is what she's going to have. Mm-hmm. So she's like, I'm so excited I have a sister too now, but no more after this. I'm like, you're right.
Is she?
No
I'm done, Mom. I don't know about you, but I'm done, Mom.
Yes. I'm like, listen, same. So yeah. So we still celebrate every year. And, you know, we talk about her, we pray, you know, so she knows she's aware of her.
On her birthday, you celebrate her on her birthday, or is it during like infant loss awareness month? Or
so the crazy thing is it's all wrapped in there, because on 10/7 is when I delivered. Exactly 7 days after my wedding, it's 7 days later I delivered, and then it's infant loss month, the month of October.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So and then it's like light a candle for anybody or children that have been lost. I want to say it's the 15th. I can't remember the exact date. I have reminders on my phone. So it kind of like works out at that time, but that it just also everything kind of happened in the same month.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you, Kim.
Thank you, guys.
We're so thankful to have you on here and to tell us your heartfelt story. I feel like a lot of people can relate. Like you said, there's a lot of people who have gone through this and not talked about it. So I'm sure people will be able to relate to your story.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me, you guys. This was great.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks so much for hanging out with us. If you want to catch up on our previous episodes, visit mamasmimosas.com, where you'll get access to all of our podcast show notes, our YouTube videos, and our private Facebook group, where we chat with you about each episode topic and host live Q&As with our fave mom tribe. Can't wait to see you there.